Great. And Nick, do you mind trying the screen sharing?
Looks like I'm not able to do it. I don't know if you need to enable me or.
Okay, let's fix that.
Aha.
Okay.
All right. Can everyone see that? Yes, great.
Okay, perfect.
I can't see that, and I'm not sure why. I think I'm set up incorrectly. It's just in a little box at the top, but I can't seem to get. All I'm seeing is Nick.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Let's see. There. Okay, so if you, and this is good for everyone to take a look at also. At the top of your screen, you should see, Louise, are you now seeing me because I'm talking?
I'm seeing you at the very top of the screen, but you're tiny and Nick is huge.
Okay, so if you go to, at the top of the screen, there's sort of like a gray bar that has 4 icons on it. One says what you're seeing. The first one says what you're seeing. And so it shows either view everyone, view who's talking, view presenter, and then at the bottom is hide webcams. And if you say click on view everyone, you should be able to see a whole group of people across the top. See if that solves it.
Yeah, no. Oh, I just clicked. There we go. Thank you very much. Sorry.
As we said last time, go-to is a little bit tricky. So if you have technical challenges, we will research them. And Counselor, I will research. I'm going to do some researching also on how we get, how you can get the video on a phone. So that's a really good question for everyone. Great. So thank you all for coming back to the second meeting. Nick, do you mind jumping to our next slide? There we go. So we put together an agenda for tonight. I did want to note one quick thing on this that we put in the email. We'll talk about this under number 6, other business not reasonably anticipated. But we did find out in this last week that this committee is subject to the open meeting law. What that means is a few things. One of which, that means a few different things, but one of them is that we need to publish an agenda ahead of time. So, and then we need to follow that agenda. We can take things out of order, but we need to discuss it and say we are taking things out of order to do so. So the first thing we have on this list is approval of the meeting summary that we sent around yesterday. I know it wasn't a lot of time, but I wanted to just get a sense of if anyone had a chance to read it, if they have questions, if they have comments that they'd like us to address. Hearing none. I'm going to take that as an okay from everyone.
Yes.
Excellent. I'm hearing, seeing some nods, thumbs up, some yeses. Great. Okay, so we will then publish that as our summary of the meeting from last time to the website. That's another piece of the open meeting laws, that we will have the summary and it will get published once the group agrees that it's correct. Next on our list, as we discussed last time, we'll do a public comment period. We currently have no members of the audience. But we do have a note in the chat. Oh, thank you, Rebecca. Rebecca put in the chat, Counselor, I don't know if you can see this, but there is a support link for using GoTo. I will put that in an email to you so you can see it. Hopefully that might come across a little bit more easily. Great. So the next thing, Nick, do you mind jumping to the next slide? The next thing we had to put on this agenda was just to touch base on the meeting on the February 23rd. Thank you all for publicizing it. We did have really good attendance that night and some great commentary. And I wanted to just give a little time to those who were able to attend or heard about it from friends and family. What have you been hearing? And do you have any ideas about how we can do more outreach around these kinds of meetings? So feel free to jump in if you want to, if you've got something. It's a little bit hard with the structure here.
I have two things I wanted to mention. I know a neighbor who lives like directly adjacent to it, and she was wondering if there was any light impact on her home with the new structures going up. And then another thing that I also wanted to mention was, I think like there were the yellow papers that were slipped into everyone's mailboxes, but then anyone who I think maybe like lives above like a retail or a business, they weren't notified of it. So like there were a few renters that I talked to that weren't aware that this was happening. So I don't know, it's just a statement.
So improving the notices to upper floors. And we're going to test something real quick. Nick, do you mind jumping out of the presentation mode? And just curious, if you go to slide 4, does it show that what I just typed? Oh, this is great. We're trying to figure out some tools to keep the notes clear so that folks can see it. So we're trying out a new system where Nick's sharing his screen and I'm typing on my screen. And it seems like everybody's seeing it, which is great. So improving notices to the upper floors, and the other question was just about light impacts. Rebecca, do you want to say, is there anything about sort of timeline for when a shadow study might happen?
Yeah, hi, this is Rebecca Cooper, Senior Planner for OSPCD's Planning, Preservation, and Zoning Division. Apologies, my camera doesn't seem to be working, but shadow studies would typically be done as a part of a site plan approval. That would happen in advance of the public meeting for that development. They can also be done as part of a master plan.
So I'm just going to note that here, the shadow study. So right now where they are is that they are working on variances, which is just specifically about those ground floors, but there will be another neighborhood meeting where they will have to present, where they will be asked to present the shadow study. That timeline is, it's not for a little bit in the process, but there will be a point in which that will happen.
Hi, Rachel. I apologize. I guess I misunderstood your question. Yes, specifically, this development team has been asked to provide a shadow study as a part of their initial meetings with the planning board. So they will have to do some basic ones at the earlier phase of the development while they're working on their hardship variances.
Okay.
Thank you.
Others? Counselors, any reflections on your end?
I would just, like to one of the points that was already made, just as far as reaching everybody, that's always a challenge. I spoke to one of the interested parties after the meeting, and one of the people who had said that, property owners didn't get letters and stuff like that, or business owners rather, business operators. And, that is, as a counselor, that's forever been the challenge, even, with regards to whether or not we could mail out notifications to every sort of registered voter or every resident. It always comes back that it's extremely difficult. So I think we're always going to run into that, and I don't know an easy fix for it. But I did hear that. But I hear that basically every meeting or everything I've ever put on, I hear people will say, I didn't know about this, and so I think that's just something to be cognizant about, and do our best to try to reach all those people. But we can talk more about strategies on what the city can actually do to make sure we're reaching everybody. But again, we've talked about this a lot as a council, and it's no easy solution.
And I agree with my colleague. I unfortunately missed the meeting on the 23rd due to some connectivity issues while traveling. But I did talk to Councillor Klingon and got his download on what had gone on at the meeting. And yeah, I concur with what my colleague just said.
I'm curious if folks think that, we've been trying to do more digital outreach as well. If more flyers sort of around the area would help, or on the property, on the edges, those sort of things, would that be helpful? We did the signs to do the recruitment to get folks to join the group. Did folks see those? Were those helpful? Seeing some nodding. Rashika, Edith, any thoughts?
I definitely saw them on Temple Street, like the yard signs. I saw those on Temple Street, definitely.
Yeah, I would say I found out about this through those signs as well. So maybe that's something that would be good to put out for meetings as well. Often having digital things going around, it's harder for all community members to be able to access that. And I would say, me as being new to the community, I wouldn't have maybe been included in those or would know where to find them. So yeah, I would say larger things like that are really good to see, especially putting it in the space itself that's going to be under development. Gives people a spatial context of oh, okay, this is happening right here. That's also important, for it to be in the space so people know that it's something that's ongoing and that's happening, rather than them knowing about just meetings happening once in a while.
The flyers posted up were very important, I thought.
Okay. It's helpful to hear. Yeah, and so what we can do, especially on these notice pieces, with the meetings that Mark Development is leading, their team is doing the bulk of the outreach. We can supplement that a little bit, and we can guide them as to what we're seeing is effective and what we're hearing from folks. So we can definitely pass these tips on to them and see if they can take it further, to consider, more flyering around polls and things like that. And then lawn signs. And Andrea, I'm seeing your note in the chat. And so I'll just read out just the idea that doing outreach flyers through local businesses could be helpful too. So yeah, I will add that one to our list also. Make sure that we're passing that on. Maybe in the business window, something like that. Awesome. Thank you all so much for that feedback. That's really helpful to hear. Any other thoughts or reflections on how that meeting went? Great. If anything comes up though, please, we can come back to this also. Do you want to move to our next slide then, and we'll see, we can always come back to this as well.
Sure. Did you want me to jump back into presentation mode, or is it okay to continue like this?
Let's see, is this large enough for folks to see?
Can I
Seeing
make
some nods?
Can I make it bigger? It's just a,
I think so. So actually, yes, if that's another one of those tools. This is, again, GoTo is unique. At the very top in that same gray bar, the third thing over is the zoom. And so you can choose to scale the screen to fit the box below all the faces, or you can choose zoom to 100% or even larger. And so you can kind of control your own zoom as well. But if it's ever too small, let us know and we can make it larger. So the other thing we had talked about last time, coming back to you all with, was to talk about engagement planning around a couple of topics. So we talked about engaging with the community around ground floor uses across the whole area. So the 299 Broadway project, as well as the corner pieces, and then to do some more targeted engagement around the corner. So we put together a couple of draft ideas, and I also wanted to, give the floor to Councillor Wilson, who did some outreach through Facebook and got some interesting results. So first, the next slide, Nick, shows a map of the area, and I just wanted to sort of have this here so everyone can get a sense of what the ground floor layout is currently looking like with the Mark Development Project at 299 and then the question mark at the corner. What they're showing here is that the darker gray boxes, and I'm going to make a quick edit on the fly as we go through this too. The darker gray boxes are retail spaces or other sort of commercial ground floor spaces. Then if this shows up, this orange box that I just drew, we'll see that they're showing as the community room. And then the corner is the question mark. The other light gray spaces are residential units on the ground floor in the plan. And then what we're seeing in the greens are all of the ground level outdoor spaces. So these are all areas at the ground plane, with the exception of the residential, where we can start thinking about what uses might be of interest to the community. And so I want to hand it over to Councillor Wilson. Nick, if you go to the next slide, just to walk us through what you were finding in the survey you put out.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, so shortly after the last meeting, I posted to the Winter Hill Neighborhood Association group on Facebook. I recognize this is just one subset of the larger neighborhood, but given the population of the group, it seemed like a good place to start in terms of asking people what they were looking for. This is what we got back in return. As you can see, a decent number of people did participate in this. I would probably estimate the neighborhood of probably 150 people. It's tough to get a firm number on that just because, not you could vote for multiple options. The runaway winner there was some sort of small grocery or bodega. It's clear, just the stat that we've heard time and time again. I hope it's not apocryphal. I hope it's actually reality. Is that Walgreens, or previously Rite Aid, apparently is one of the top selling locations of that brand in terms of food sales, which just indicates that there's a real desire in the neighborhood to have an option to grab food in the immediate location without having to go all the way to Stop and Shop. There was some slight confusion around the assignment, it looks like, because you'll notice people did enter things like housing, apartments and affordable housing. You know, this was supposed to be narrowly about what kind of activation there would be in terms of like the retail or ground floor non-housing components. But as you see there, there's a lot of support for a community center. So you know, people I think will be very happy to find out that there's a plan right now to have a community space there. You know, you can see the other top things there: coffee shop, sort of generic takeout restaurant, sit-down restaurant. And I didn't want to get too specific though. I'll say the Taqueria burrito location definitely was my contribution. But yeah, I'm not going to go read all these out to you. You can all see them yourselves. But this is basically some initial feedback that I was able to get from, again, a subset of the neighborhood.
Counselor, can I ask, how was it structured? Like, you can add your own idea and then people could continue to vote on that idea? Was that the structure?
That is exactly the structure. Yeah, Facebook allows you, when you're doing a poll, there's an option to basically allow users to add their own options. And I left that option on, and as you'll see, people took us up on that. There, people definitely added their own suggestions there.
I'm curious what other people think on the results.
I think who you've polled pretty much spoke well for what I think the property should have. I'm glad to see Walmart only got 5 votes. I think I might like to see a little bit more affordable housing there if that's doable in the plan. But community recreation centers, grocery stores, bodegas, takeout restaurants as the retail space, I think that sounds like what the space needs.
I'm just like curious to know what were the options you started with and what were the ones that were added, just to see like what was specifically added to them.
That's a great question. I have to sort of retrace my memory bank here, but I definitely had small grocery, the ones that were mine, small grocery bodega, community rec center, I believe coffee shop, takeout restaurants, sit-down restaurants, affordable artist maker space. Small hardware store was a user suggestion that got a lot of interest. Art gallery or cafe might have been mine. Gym yoga studio was definitely mine. Micro retail space like Bow Market was mine. Taqueria burrito restaurant, ice cream shop. Dry cleaner was the other one. Apparently no one else wants a dry cleaner.
Interesting. Yeah, this is super helpful just to see sort of that initial pass where people thinking.
I would like to do something maybe targeting a different language at some point. I mean, Facebook does offer translation, but just knowing the makeup of the Winter Hill Neighborhood Association, you know, I'm not sure I don't know that I would consider it fully representative of the neighborhood, just demographically. So yeah, I'd be curious to talk to my neighbors who aren't necessarily in that Facebook group and see where they're at too. I'm not sure the best way for that. I'm happy to have individual conversations with people, but yeah, I mean, I consider it a jumping off point.
Yeah, so Nick, if you want to jump to the next slide, I can show you what we were thinking. Before we heard from you, Counselor, we did some thinking also on this, and we were sort of thinking of doing a survey. Sort of, we have the city's platform that we use is the Summer Voice website, which allows us an opportunity to do a survey. It is also translatable into, I think, like 100 languages, which is great. And what's nice about that is that folks can answer in whichever language they are most comfortable in, and it will translate to English when we read the results. So Facebook probably is similar, and I'm liking the idea that maybe we actually add a Facebook component. We can explore that option and see if there's a way to build a survey that is Facebook base that we can pass around to multiple groups. We have to do some research on that on our end. But what we were thinking in terms of a starting off point to go with this research, which is great, is to put it in more of a long form format, with the idea being like, we're looking for what you'd be most excited about on the ground floor. What are you most excited about for the ground floor, and what are you least excited about? And I had sort of the idea of that sort of that duality, so that we can get people who say, you know, I'm least excited about a bank, but it will be okay if there's a bank, right? Or like, I'm least excited about, like, I'm very against something particular, right? So we can get those kind of two ends of the spectrum. And then what we list out here is sort of that we would ask people to consider, you know, retail uses that they're interested in, service business they're interested in, places to get together, and then activities and outcomes. And what I picked up on in one of the things I picked up on in February 23rd's conversation was that there were a couple people who brought up that they are really hoping that the retailers that come to the ground floor of these buildings that Mark Development's planned will pay a living wage. And that these are, you know, the job opportunities that they bring are something that folks can really will produce a good, you know, they are good jobs. So I wanted to sort of leave an opening for people to bring us other perspectives that we might not be catching if we just say, like, what are your retail goals? And see if there are these sort of more subtle things that we can add to the list. So there's a lot of text on this page. But this is sort of the draft of what we were thinking might be a survey, you know, introduction and the questions. But the idea was sort of a long form. And I'm curious if you all think a long form is good. Should we be supplementing that with something more like what Councillor Wilson just showed? Other ideas about how we might ask people these questions?
Just a general thing, in terms of the question of what types of ground floor activities would you be most excited to see? I think it often happens when we're drafting these questions is that you and I know what ground floor activities means, but the average person living who, well, doesn't know about the project, doesn't know what you're referring to when you say ground floor activities. So maybe just keeping it as activities or activities in Temple Square, just keeping it more general, because that can kind of throw people off sometimes in what you're referring to.
So consider striking that. That's helpful, because I think also, Councillor, you were getting in some of the results in your survey, we might be able to include that as well, right? That like, we're gonna, if we keep it simpler like that, people will tell us, yes, I want more affordable housing, or things that are obviously for the upper stories, and we can then filter that out. That's a good catch.
Hey, Rachel.
Just jump in.
Hey, this is Breck Bailey. How are you?
Excellent. Breck, you can hear us.
I can, yeah. Just I never know if I'm audible or not. I had one quick question on the uses. You know, I think a lot of those are would be great. You know, grocery, restaurants, all that stuff. Is there anything in the ordinances that, or you know, for permitting or variance purposes, that you know there are certain requirements around, you know, you need to have X number of parking spots or other things like that you know would potentially prohibit, you know, a use like that? I only bring it up because I think my original conversations with folks about the development, there was no plan for, you know, parking for anyone other than residents of the units up top. So I was just curious if you knew anything about on that end of things.
Rebecca, I want to see if you want to answer that first.
Yes, thank you for the question. So there are a lot of questions as to how parking could be enabled in the neighborhood. A lot of smaller spaces would have more, you know, we have the ability to do waivers in some districts for, you know, small 2,000 or 5,000 square foot spaces. This area is also in a transit walk shed, which further reduces the amount of parking that is required for some businesses. I actually think that in terms of restrictions, the key feature that I would be attentive to is the fact that this development is on a pedestrian street, and that will tell, you know, it limits some of the kinds of businesses that would be there to specific kinds of retail. Restaurants is always definitely welcome. Arts and entertainment spaces, things like that.
Thank
I'm
you.
gonna make a note that maybe we have to describe that in this sort of intro.
So
Think about how we put that in.
could we quantify how many non-resident parking spaces would come along with development?
So as of now, there is a very small amount of surface parking planned. And Nick, if you go back 2 slides to the map, this blue arrow between the corner pieces and the building, the next building on Broadway, where there's a blue arrow pointing down, that area is planned as a small parking area with parking that serves. What I don't remember is if that parking is just serving the existing businesses or if it's also parking that would serve the retail businesses. I think what the in the most part, the plan is that this is, you know, the businesses that they were aiming for are really walk-up businesses rather than drive-to businesses. Any reactions to that concept?
Oh, sorry, Rachel. This is Rebecca Cooper. I just wanted to chime in there. That is certainly a very important point that you just made about walk-up businesses. That is the intention of the pedestrian street zoning. So that's a really good way to frame this, that we are definitely looking to encourage businesses that would be local and walkable as opposed to a more regional destination.
And I think the list that that have come in from the Facebook survey, Nick, if you want to jump to that next one, it seems like most of those might be more of the walk-up type interest so far. With the exception of maybe the music venue and the bowling alley. And maybe Walmart.
Interestingly enough, a Walmart would be, I think, discouraged in this area because it's large. It would be larger than 10,000 square feet, so there would be a permit, a special permit required.
I think walk-up spaces just makes a lot more sense because it's also a very congested intersection, that right turn onto Temple. So I think just like not encouraging a ton of cars to come here as a destination is really great.
So I'm getting, we need to explain a little bit this more as we're asking people for their opinions. It might be helpful, it's what it's sounding like, to share a little bit more about what are some of the contextual standards that we will be able to, that businesses are going to be expected to fit in. So maybe that 10,000 square foot limit, which is, I mean, 10,000 is pretty big. Breck, do you know how large your space is at the brewery?
It's about 2,000 of retail square footage.
So 5 times the retail portion of the brewery.
Yep.
So that's pretty large, but it's not the size of a full-scale grocer, right? A full-scale grocer is going to be more like 40,000. So Walmarts are usually 40 to 50,000 square feet. We can expand, we can touch up this question a little bit, but I wanted to sort of jump to where we were thinking for the next piece as well, and that might help with the sort of as you're sort of mulling all this over. Feel free to stop me and jump in if you've got a question or an idea that you want to throw out there. Nick, if you jump to the next one. So, because I want to sort of walk through this in the next slide, and then I think we can talk a bit more about this. So around the corner decision, we sort of had the same graphic up last time too, that we want to sort of talk to folks about how we proceed there. And so there's a few options of the route forward. One is that the corner stays as it is, as the Mark Development 299 Broadway project proceeds, because isn't necessary that they are tied together. So one is we leave it as is for now. Another option would be that we do move forward with the eminent domain process and we look towards redevelopment. And if we're looking towards redevelopment, there's 2 options again. One is that we look towards that as converting this to an open space, and or we look to creating something new out of that lot. And that might be, is that a new building? And if it's a new building, what does that look like? So there's a lot of complexity to this, and what we were thinking is that this kind of conversation probably needs a kickoff larger community meeting where we can have the city's experts in public space speak about, if this were an open space, what does that mean in terms of size? What does that mean in terms of lighting? As someone was saying earlier, like how much light does this get? What could this feel like as an open space? And then similarly, what does this mean in terms of scale of building that could be accomplished? Have our experts who think about that talk about it as well. And then the leave it as is option is what it is. So we were thinking, if you jump to the next slide, Nick, in terms of how these 2 things might lay out in parallel, is that we might be able to sort of jump in sooner than later, and really like as soon as we figure out these details of this question, distribute a survey on that ground floor activity now, and sort of have that out there so people can keep giving us feedback as we prepare for that next community meeting, and that simultaneously on the corner conversation that staff is really working on getting that meeting together with all the detail necessary so folks can give us good feedback, and then we sort of take in input starting at that point for that piece. So we're doing all this conversation about what are people's priorities on the ground floor across the board earlier, and then the community meeting we can present the findings that we have from that, and then simultaneously we sort of use that as the launching point for the conversation about the corner, put it out there, and then do a survey and further follow up after that. So we're sort of doing these in a offset timeline. But that way we're doing one community meeting where we can talk about both things together, because they do intertwine, right? If there's some interesting options, to think about the ground floor spaces. If we are looking at a new building, maybe there's an opportunity to get some of those ones that are more challenging in terms of the economics in a city project versus in the private project. I just want to read out what Tom added in the chat in case anyone isn't able to see it. He was just sort of saying in terms of those scale comparisons, 10,000 is sort of the upper limit that the zoning allows without a special permit. And the Rite Aid is 13,000 square feet, the current Walgreens space. Councilor, try unmuting again.
Yeah, no, I was muted by an organizer.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, that's okay. Yeah, no, I think this is a good plan. You know, I always worry about meeting fatigue, so you know, to kind of combine things and discuss multiple aspects of this thing, I think is probably a wise idea.
And I should have noted also that, so we had been talking about doing a site walk as a group at our next meeting in April. Because we are open meeting law, how that will work is that we will allow the public to join. So if there's folks who are particularly interested in joining, they will be allowed to do that. And we'll just recap any observations, we'll recap those when we meet together in a recorded environment as opposed to out in the field. So that would be another opportunity where if we do have folks who are interested, where we can sort of talk about, you know, why we're talking about the activity, these activities, and why it's of interest that we're talking about what happens at eye level, right? Where people can walk in, the public spaces where people can just walk into the doors. Trying to figure out, Rashika, how to say this without saying ground floor.
Yeah, I also, it says distribute surveys online. Will we also be doing like in-person surveying?
We could. That's a good thought. We could do some paper surveys also. I'm curious if anyone has ideas of where we might distribute them. I'm thinking maybe for Louise and Edith, you all have experience at the Elizabeth Peabody House. Would it be possible to distribute paper surveys to folks who are there for programs?
I don't see why not. I'll check to see if that's something we can do.
Would we do it during like the food distribution for the food pantry or in another way? I'm not sure.
We could do it both. I would think you'd want to do it at the food pantry and then to the parents of the kids picking up, you know, when they pick up in the afternoon or drop off in the morning.
Yeah, I'm trying to think where else. Maybe just also handing them out outside the Rite Aid if they'll let us, the Walgreens, just to shoppers.
That might be, I mean, I don't know if the entire neighborhood, I don't know if all of them are really versed in electronic media. So it may be good to have some that are either posted somewhere they can pick off or distributed to houses in those surrounding streets. Just put in the mailbox.
With an envelope, yeah. We can think about that if there's a way that we can collect them again. Yeah, you know what? I wonder if we could do a survey pickup, a drop-off box. That might be something we could look into. Is there a spot we could do a drop your survey here? Or we look into stamps too. Both are an option.
Well, you might be able to put a box by where the Star Market is now. Actually get them up to, a lot of people walk by there.
I'm gonna write that one down.
This is like what we do for engagement for our project is that we actually go to the space and spend about a day there and actually have people come by and do the survey. So that also just helps with not having to collect them some way, but actually being there, and also explaining to people what the project is, because someone walking by might pick up the survey, but they don't know what they're responding to. So yeah, I'm happy to volunteer to do that also, like one weekend or something.
Thanks, that's a great idea. I think if we can figure out a few key times, maybe we can sort of divide and conquer. It'd be nice to, yeah, I like these ideas of getting in-person options. I think that's going to be really helpful for folks. And we also can translate for in-person surveys, we can get them translated. It'll take us a couple of weeks to get the translations done, but we can sort of schedule. One of the things that's nice about this is that if this survey is out there for until we have this community meeting, that we have time also to get things translated and get it out there. And so there'll be a lot of different ways for people to respond. This is really excellent. Rebecca's reminding me there's potentially a way we could do this at City Hall also. It's a little bit further away, but for anyone who does come that direction, we could do a second box at City Hall.
This is Andrea at the Welcome Project. I think we could leave some surveys at the Mystic Housing with our partners at the Mystic, and we could also distribute to some of the students in our ESOL program who live in Winter Hill.
That would be fantastic.
We can, of course, be helpful too, Rachel. I want to know.
Awesome. Thank you, Brooke. So maybe there's a drop-offs, a pickup drop-off, a survey site, survey box. So I think we can do some research on our end and see if we can figure out some simple boxes that are decorated and easy to see that we can have in a couple of these locations, because I think this is a great idea for in-person, and that way it's really flexible for folks, and then we can do some tabling events to get the word out, and it'll be really visible. I think that'll help a lot just in terms of, as we were sort of mentioning at the beginning, like how do we get people to come to the these meetings with the development team. I think raising awareness is also going to be a really good step in getting people interested in following the project. This is fantastic. We really appreciate it. On the corner side, does this feel comfortable to folks too, that we'll sort of do a kickoff with a presentation, sort of delving a little bit more deeply, and then we'll do more surveying, I think, after that. That's sort of, again, a kickoff meeting where we'll do this transition happening at that point where we can sort of be synthesizing that on the ground floor pieces and then moving the conversation to the corner. I think there are a few people saying they were comfortable, and I just wanted to double check with others we might not have heard from yet. I'm just putting out there, Michelle, if you can hear us, if you have any thoughts, please jump in. Please, anyone? Great. Excellent. So hearing no further comments at the moment, Nick, do you mind shifting us to the next? So we do have this plan for the site walk on the 14th. The plan is that we'll meet on site. We are still working out a specific route, hopefully for good weather that day. If it looks like it's going to be pouring rain, do folks want to continue? Do we want to regroup if the weather's not looking great? See some nodding from Rashika. Is that a postpone if it's pouring?
I mean, if it's actually pouring, we should probably postpone. But if it's just drizzling and icky out, why don't we continue?
Okay, I like that idea. Does everyone agree? See nods. All right, excellent. Speak now if you're against it. Okay, so ideas that we'll meet right here in front of the Star Market. That way we're sort of very visible to everyone who's joining, and we'll do a walk around the perimeter of the site. We are investigating, where else we can stop and look at specific things. But the idea is just to get a sense of the scale of these different spaces, what's where, get a sense of that grade change. This slope there is a lot of hill. We are at the top of the hill here. But the site does sit on a hill. So we want to sort of get a sense of that physically all together as we move into these next steps. And we will be done. Also, I think we will plan to meet at 5:30, and I think let's aim to be done at 6:30. I know counselors, you guys have to be down at City Hall again next month. So we'll aim to wrap up a little early and keep that more to an hour. I think we should be able to see everything. It's big, but it's not that big. Great. Next thing on our list, just the last piece before, I think this might be the last thing before we go to move to public comment, and we don't have any attendees at the moment. But with this change to the fact that this group is going to be subject to the open meeting law, I sent you all the open meeting law and conflict of interest documents. There is an acknowledgement form, so I will send you all an email with the details of what you need to do to make this all official. But there's a couple of steps that we'll need to take with the clerk's office to get everyone certified. You have to read, give a read through of the documents. There's an acknowledgement form that says you've received them, and there's also swearing in that needs to be done, which is basically at some point at your convenience going to City Hall and being officially sworn in as a new commissioner. The other thing is that there is going to be a training coming up for all boards and commissions. I'm not sure how they're going to structure this, but every board and commission and all the staff that support them are going to be doing an open meeting law training. I assume it's virtual, but I don't have details yet. So as soon as we do, we will share that with you. And our staff will all be there with you as well.
Hi, Rachel, it's Rebecca. I have a little information on that, actually. In order to in order to be compliant with concerns about debate and other things that would constitute a quorum, what they're going to do is create a webinar so that all the board and commissioners members, as well as staff members who are going to attend as well, are going to be in the audience. So there's no opportunity to like chit chat among people, and that way we won't have a problem with official meetings because they'll have a quorum of board members there. So it will be a virtual meeting, and there will be, my understanding is that there will be some contact and information coming out soon.
Thanks, Rebecca, that's helpful. Any questions on any of that? Or anything else we've discussed tonight? It's been incredibly helpful. I hope it's been interesting for everyone, but this has been fantastic for us. It will definitely make this process a lot better, and we will adjust everything and get material out to you with how we're going to proceed. I have a question for everyone. Is it all right with everyone here if before we meet on April 14th, if we get the survey going? Okay, we will put everything together nicely with a detailed plan and send that to you all so you can see it before we start. And I will also investigate putting together a survey like the one Councillor Wilson put out, because that seemed like a pretty good option for folks who have a very detailed, who want to sort of, so we can get a read kind of quickly about what people are excited about. How do people feel about that one?
Good.
Excellent. Okay, so we'll investigate. I don't know if we'll be able to pull that one off technologically, but we will try. Great. Okay, that's all we had for this evening. We wanted to leave time for public comment, but we have no public at the moment. Anything else before we break? All right, hearing none, I think we are at adjournment. Just about 1 hour exactly. Fantastic. Okay, so thank you all again so much for your time tonight and for all your great input. We will get this rolling so that we can get everything out there and started before we get to the April 14th. And then April 14th, we will meet in person at Star Market and you will all get to see how tall everyone is. It's a fact of Zoom and this virtual world. You never know how tall anyone is until you meet them in person. And I am much shorter than you probably think. Awesome. Fantastic, everyone. Thank you all and have a great evening.
Thank you.